All right, it is Friday, 8:30 Pacific, 10:30 Central, 11:30 Eastern. My friend Jake here. Jake, say hey to everybody.
How are we doing, guys?
We are getting ready to take you through, Session 2, the 6 MythUnderstandings. And today we're going to be reviewing MREA. Yes, if you are listening to this, you should be in the right room because you should have this book, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, pages 47 to 64. Now, before we get going in this section, I wanted to read to you guys something that I thought was really, really interesting. Now, Ken Blanchard says this. He says, the human mind and the computer share one startling trait. They both believe whatever we tell them. They both believe whatever we tell them. Our mind and a computer have one startling trait. They both believe whatever we tell them. We've all heard the old saying about computers, garbage in, garbage out. Well, guess what? It's the same for your mind. And so that's the power of this section of our reading together of the book club. That's the power of pages 47 through 64 in the MREA book. I've often heard people who are reading this for the first time go through this section and they kind of don't understand why it's here in this book. And then by the end of this section, the light bulb goes on and they get it, because this mindset piece is foundational. If you don't get this, if you haven't wrapped your head around this component, nothing beyond this is going to amount to anything in your business. All right, so let's dive into it. So Jake, I think we do just like we did last time. We just go through and kind of just back and forth whatever you have that jumped out at you. But my first, and guys, yes, I was telling Jake when this started, I reread this for a third time before going through this with you guys this morning. And I have to tell you, I have to be completely transparent. It was an aha for me reading through this again. I failed to realize how often I'm referencing pieces from this section of the book without even thinking about it. So that's the power of going through this book every single year or more. You should be going through it once a year, if not more. But the power of going through it that often is you begin to internalize it. And then you begin to just make this a part of who you are and how you think and how you see the world and how you do things inside of your business. Man, it's powerful. So on page 48, we're talking about this mindset component. So page 48, about a sentence into the first paragraph at the top, it says this. He's talking about Mark Twain's cat after that story. Like Mark Twain's cat, we tend to base our actions on what we believe to be true. Underline the word believe. We base our actions on what we believe to be true. Doesn't mean it is truth. It's what we believe to be true. Unfortunately, what we believe to be the truth may actually be myth. When beliefs are based on truth and not myth, our actions have foundation and more likely to produce satisfying results. However, beliefs grounded in myths tend to lead to unfounded fears and a life of limitations. Now, what is he saying in that section? Guys, here's what he's saying in that section. He's saying that we have to choose. It's just like what we talked about when we kicked this off. Ken Blanchard saying that the difference or the similarity between the human brain and computers is that they'll both believe whatever we tell them. We have to constantly be checking, what are we telling ourselves? Mm-hmm. And the beliefs that I have around what's possible, the world around me, the business, all of the things that I can comprehend, my beliefs, are they rooted in myth or truth? Now, Jake, we've seen this a lot with people we've coached over the years, that people, and we're going to talk about this actually very specifically in one of the myth understandings, that people don't believe certain things are possible. And yet when we really push them on where they got that belief, why is it that they have come to that conclusion?
Right.
What do we find?
So a couple things backing up and to answer that question. I mean, what we find, people believe your brain. There's so much that you want to jump into, right? So your brain is a computer. It's 100% true. It's just like your phone, right? If stuff doesn't work, take it out. If you need new stuff, put new stuff in there. That works. But the phone only does what you tell it to do. It doesn't just arbitrarily do stuff, right? Your brain's the exact same way. It just doesn't arbitrarily grab information from out there. So our beliefs, I actually had like a visceral reaction when you read that last statement about in a life of limitations. Like my skin crawled when you said that. It was amazing to me, as many times as I've read this book, just like you, that we go through that, what our beliefs are. So when something that I used to do unintentionally, and I didn't do it, and I don't remember who called me out on it the first time, was during recruiting appointments, right? when a new agent in particular comes in and asks me, well, when am I going to get my first paycheck? Right. And this was just part of my scripting at the time. And yet what I was doing is I was adding a label to people as I would answer. Well, typically what we see is you put a house under contract, takes 45 days to close. So your first paycheck could plausibly be anywhere between 90 days and 6 months, is just what I would say. Well, and Lord, forgive me to all the people that I said that to.
Right.
That is such a lie. And what I did is I just labeled that new agent. Their brain heard, I don't get paid for 6 months, right? So they get ready for the next 6 months. So our beliefs are founded through it's called VACOG, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory. Our sensory acuity, that's where our stuff is founded in our beliefs. So when we hear it, somebody says to me, you're not getting paid for 6 months, and I believe them, I just registered that as an app of belief in there. So our limiting beliefs are just the same as our positive beliefs. When they told us in first or second grade, you can be anything you want to be when you grow up, we believed it at that point. When did we stop believing that? There's so much power in these next 20, 30 pages. It just amazes me.
Perfect example to what you're saying. So some people may know Cody Gibson, and Cody's the guy that I get to work with at United Home Group. And Cody shares a story of when he actually got started in real estate. And I think it's really applicable. I'll make it really short, but he came into it and treated it like a job. He came from a different industry. He had a friend that was in real estate. Long story short, he showed up at 8 o'clock. He did his work. And he was very consistently, he got to the point very consistently where he was taking a piece of business a week. And so he came to the manager at the time at that real estate office, non-KW, traditional real estate office, came to the manager and he said, hey, you know what? I'm short this week. I don't yet have it, but here's all the things I have in line to make it up. I'm going to find it. Don't fire me. And the response that manager said is something that still haunts Cody today, yet he teaches so many people because of it. The manager said, oh, are you kidding? Don't worry about it. Nobody takes a piece of business a week.
Yes.
And guess what Cody said? Cody said it was months. It took him a couple months to get back into the rhythm and routine, to forget what that person said, to get back in the rhythm and routine to what he was doing, to what was possible. But as soon as that person told him, oh, you're fine, nobody does that. All of a sudden, guess what happened? Which we'll talk about that in the 4-minute mile. But perfect example. What stories are we telling ourselves, and what stories are we telling those around us?
Yeah. Amen to that.
Really, really important. Now, a little further down, midway of page 48, this chapter is really about fear, and the source of most of our fears is myth. You might have heard it this way: an acronym for fear is false evidence appearing real, right? It's based in myth. More times than not, almost every time you can think of, if you think back to anything you were actually afraid of, it very rarely, if ever, comes to pass the way you're afraid it's going to.
Yep.
It's false evidence appearing real, or like they say here, it's based in myth. I find it extremely helpful to think of fears in terms of what generally creates them, myths, and what sets us free from them, truths. Now, what they did is, and they're working with all these millionaire real estate agents, which is how this book got started. They took two focus groups of agents netting over $1 million at the time and said, what do you do, how do you do, and why do you do? And that's what this book is built up of, okay? That's what makes this book so powerful. It's not somebody's theory. This is actually what has allowed people to get to this level of success. Hey,
Right.
Merceal. So here's what we know. Here is absolutely what we know. They took all of those people and they found that there were 6 common, what they call myth understandings. Now, if you're like me, these have absolutely impacted you negatively in your past. And for some people watching or listening to this later, they will impact you in the future. And so the whole point of this is studying these to prepare so that when they start creeping up in our mind, we identify them, we put them down back in their place where they should be, and we carry on doing what we know we should be doing. Now, so let's look at these. On page 49, you see the list of all the 6 myth understandings, but we're going to actually chunk it down one at a time and go through these because they're really, really, really valuable. Now, when I was a new team leader, I came from a traditional company. I had never had anything like the MREA book, and so I was like a starving child getting food. I was just reading and taking it as fast as I could, and my office was plastered with all things MREA, and one of the things that sat above my desk for years was a photocopy of these 6 myth understandings, because I came from a traditional company. In leadership, when you're in a traditional company, they don't talk about recruiting. Like, it's cool if you bring in some people, but there's no talk about growth and building people's businesses and being inside of an environment in a company that helps people become the best versions of themselves. None of those conversations happened. No. So I came from a traditional background where I had not seen any of this, and I'd been told a lot of myths. And so now these absolutely set me free and set me on the course to accomplish a lot of great stuff with a lot of great people. So let's dive into the first one. Page 49, towards the bottom. The first common myth understanding. What is it, Jake?
I can't do it.
Okay, so now I'm going to tell you a funny story.
Yeah.
What's the truth on this one?
Truth is, yeah, I'm jumping ahead. I'm all excited, man. Until you try, you can't possibly know what you can or can't do. So
true story. And if somebody calls my bluff, I will have my kids on this call with me. But we don't permit our kids to use profanity in the house. And on the list of profanities they're not allowed to use, guess what word is on there? Can't. Such a bad word. They're not allowed to use, like, they'll start saying that, and I look at them and they'll go, it's not okay. Because you can't tell me you can't do something. You absolutely could. And it took me for a while with my oldest, which he's learned this lesson. But there were a couple of times he would give me this BS, I can't do this. And so I'd take him outside and have him do it. Yep. And then I'd have him do it 10 more times. And then I'd tell him, don't ever tell me you can't do something, because you just did what you said you couldn't do 10 times right here in front of me. Like, can't, but if we're going to, like, he talks about that more here, but if we're going to take that hard of a stance on it in our business, why in the heck would we allow it to be anywhere else in our world? We got to look for can'ts and cut them out, okay? Page 50. And he goes through this conversation he had with the student. We aren't going to go through that in time. You read it, I'm trusting. But it gives you the framework for how he got to his statements that we're about to read. And here's what he says on page 50, about middle of the page. Unless you absolutely know your capabilities and limitations, why would you entertain this kind of dialogue, meaning the I can't or limited thinking? Yeah. One of the biggest things I've seen absolutely transform myself and other people around me is when we can get people to think really big, think possibilities, or possibility thinking, like Gary has said so many times. Yeah. Instead of thinking, what can I actually or reasonably or realistically do? All of those are stupid, crappy words. How about we look at it and what's possible? Not what's probable, what's possible. Because there's always a way to get to that path. It's just going to look a little bit different than it has before. Now look on the bottom of 50 in the me section, right here. He says this, he says, let's pretend, and he's talking to this student. He said, let's pretend for a second that I actually did believe in the need to be realistic about your potential. Are you telling me you'd willingly turn your kids over to me to be taught that doctrine? And of course, the person's answer is, heck no. Right. And Gary's point is, then why in the world would you teach yourself that doctrine or buy into it? Yeah. Yet you hear it all the time. In coaching conversations, what would it take for you to double what you did last month? Oh, I can't do that. Tell me more about that. Right. Has somebody out there done that number of units in a month? Well, yeah. So don't tell me it can't be done. You just haven't figured out how yet. Yeah. It's absolutely possible. You're choosing to hold on to your limitations rather than what's possible. And that's great, but you're never going to have the life you want when you have that mindset. And it's the whole point of myth understanding number 1. Right. Now look towards the bottom there, or I guess in the middle there first. He says, okay, then take your own advice. If you wouldn't talk to a child that way, why would you talk to yourself that way? You don't need that kind of non-productive self-talk going on in your head. And underline self-talk. Because we talk to ourselves all the time. And in a mastermind, I want to say it was last year, it was a small group. And Gary, I'd heard him say it before, but it wasn't until this setting that it really struck home. And he asked everybody in the room a question. He said, okay, if you had friends or people in your world that talked to you the same way you did to yourself with your self-talk, how many of them would still be your friends? Yeah. We're like, okay, not many. No. So why in the heck do we allow ourselves to talk and treat ourselves the way we do? We're in our head being our own worst enemy 90% of the time. Yeah. If we had those people around us, we would level up those people. We'd top grade them. We'd find a different 5 people to surround ourselves with. Right. The sticking point is you're kind of stuck with you. Yeah. We talk about doing affirmations first thing in the morning, like Miracle Morning, pick your book, pick your positive book that says first thing in the morning, do affirmations, journal them, write them down. Why would you stop there?
Why would you just stop in the morning doing those positive self-talk, positive affirmations, continue it through the day? Because if you spend 8 hours of this negative limiting belief thinking, that's what you're going to have. Regardless, if you spend 5 powerful minutes in the morning, you're going to undermine all of that work that you did by 8 hours of negative talk.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a slippery slope.
Easy.
Okay, bottom page 51. This is the key too, and if you don't have this underlined or highlighted, it should be. Once you try and achieve one thing you thought might not be possible, it becomes easier and easier for you to see the impossible and then achieve it. Mm-hmm. It's the same adage of how do we eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
One bite at a time. So we find little incremental things. This is where the 411 is such a useful tool as well. We break this big, hairy, audacious goal down into small, bite-sized chunks, and all of a sudden, we see what's possible. All of a sudden, what we thought wasn't possible before, we're making reality in our worlds because we simply took a big goal, broke it down, and changed our thinking on what was possible. We didn't limit ourselves in terms of what we could achieve. Now, on page 52, and this is where that conversation with the 4-minute mile comes in. And man, this is this is the phenomenal one. Yeah. All right. Like, I love this story. I use this one even outside of real estate when I'm training and coaching or teaching. I use this story all the time. What's the synopsis of it? Let's look at this. And I'm not going to read it all, but bottom line, for the longest time, no one thought a sub 4-minute mile was possible. No one thought it was possible.
Right.
Industry experts, doctors, runners, like there wasn't one person that thought it was possible. And so as a result, guess what had not happened?
You never reached it.
No one had ever accomplished it. They got real close. They inched right up to it, but they never, ever accomplished it. Now, as he talks about, there's a British medical student named Roger Bannister. Well, he decided that he might be able to do it. So he had possibility thinking. Keep that in mind. He took his goal and he broke it down into manageable pieces. Does this sound familiar?
Doesn't it though?
He wasn't trying to run the 4-minute mile all at one time. What was he doing? He was building the muscle. He broke it down into small, bite-sized, accomplishable, that's a word, tasks. He's breaking it down so that he could absolutely manage the process of getting to from where he is to what was deemed not possible. Now, on May 6, 1954, he ran the Miracle Mile in 3 minutes, 59.4 seconds. He accomplished what no one else thought could be done. Now, that's cool in and of itself, but that's not the most important part of the story.
Right.
Keep reading. What's often missed, further down in on that paragraph, what's often missed is the subplot about the equal but opposite power of myth. John Landy, who had famously tried to achieve the 4-minute mile for years, not a couple times, for years. This guy had devoted his life to trying to break this 4-minute mile. Years he had attempted. Don't miss this. Years. Underline years. Well, as soon as Bannister did it, he went on to break Bannister's record in less than 2 months. He'd been trying for years, and as soon as somebody else showed him that it was possible, 2 months later, he broke that record. So how does this show up in our business? Where has this shown up, or could it show up in our business? How do we tie this, Jake, into the agents who are watching this business?
You know, I do the same thing. Mine's completely obliterated with underlines. You can almost not read it anymore because I underline 2 or 3 times on something in there. And it's like you've been talking about. It's all about possibility thinking when you get into this. And it's the belief of what you can do. I love the characteristic of the 411 because if you look at it, what Landy did is he went, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run 4 sub 1 minute quarter miles. I'm just going to do them consistently. And he did it quickly. It wasn't that he just showed up one day as like uber athlete guy. I'm the greatest that ever was. I have all the natural ability. We've talked about that before, right? In the world that would just carry me through that. No, he practiced, he trained, and he trained very purposefully in what he did. And he just had to tie it together. So through a series of small events, the 4 sub 1 minute quarter miles, he tied it together and did it. And then, like you said, the subplot's the amazing part where Landy comes, I said Landy did, Bannister did it, where Landy comes back in and goes, oh, it is possible. So it literally, the light turned on for him So we see it all the time. New agents, experienced agents, you hit that ceiling of achievement and somebody else is on the other side of it. And when they're on the other side of it, they talk to that person and they go, oh, it is possible to do. All I have to do is this. It's that simple. Rather than innovate, I just model and follow through. So that's all that Landy turned around and did with Bannister's Mile. He just modeled it.
So here's what I thought was interesting too, Jake, building on what you're saying. The key here is the barrier that held everybody back, the barrier that held Landy back was not a physical or an ability barrier. What was it? It
was a mental barrier. 100% mental.
Right
block.
up here, guys. This is why this section is in the beginning of the book. This was not by chance. This is why Gary put it here, because after this section, we begin diving into parts of this book that are going to make some of you go,
yeah.
Like it's going to stretch your thinking to the level it may not have been stretched before in terms of what's possible. Yet what I can tell you is everything that's in this book has been done now by everybody. So now you don't get to use the excuse that Landy did. The Bannisters of the real estate world have already showed you that it's possible.
Right.
We just have to make note of the fact this is our example here, that what held these people back before. Because think of it, when Gary wrote this book, when it first came out, there were not a lot of people accomplishing success at this level in real estate. Guys, when this book came out, there were not really teams per se in real estate. There were a small handful. It was not widespread and adopted like it is today. When this book came out, the idea of teams was a foreign concept, and it was like the 4-minute mile. Yet when people saw that other people could do it and had success doing it, look around the industry today.
Yeah.
The landscape's completely different. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now on page 53, towards the top of the page, he's talking about people and what they realize through this process. And he says they understand that the very first step to discovering their potential is what? It's trying. Trying. Because guess what? You're going to fail. You will absolutely fail. And we'll talk about that in a few pages as well. You're going to fail. Yet the first step towards seeing where your threshold of potential is, what your capacity is by simply trying, taking action, starting now. Okay? Page 54. Page 54. Now this is big because Jake, I know you've heard this from people that you coach as well. Here's the truth. If it's been done in another market, it can be done in your market. Because now we're in the second myth understanding, which is it can't be done in my market. We hear this one a lot. Oh, well, it works over there, but it would not work in my market. Okay.
I'm sure at one point I said that to you.
Yeah.
As I recall.
Everybody says that. I've said it too. Like that's the cool thing about these is none of us are immune to them. All of us have fallen victim to them at one point. And yet now that we're aware of them, we don't have to any longer. So the myth is it can't be done in my market. The truth is, yes, it can. You just may need a new approach. It may need to be tweaked a little bit. So he says on 54, here's the truth. If it's been done in another market, it can be done in your market. What I want you to realize is that once it's been done, no matter where, it's just a matter of what? A matter of finding out how that's possible in your world.
Right.
This is
that little bit of creative license. At this point, go, okay. Ceiling of achievement, I have to be a little bit creative to go through that ceiling of achievement.
The what remains the same. The how is what changes potentially, right? Because we all have some different rules in our MLSs. We all have some different rules from state licensing law and the Board of Real Estate in our specific area. So the how may look a little different. The what can be the exact same thing, which is what his point is here. We can all accomplish the same things. We just may have to take a different path to get there. Now, middle of page 54. He says, until you try an approach that worked in another market, you'll never know whether it can or can't be done in yours. While your marketplace will certainly determine what some of the variables are, your plan of attack and your implementation or execution of it will always be the key determining factors. So you may have to tweak up the how, the what remains the same. Now look at the bottom of page 54. The first one to overcome this myth understanding enjoys a distinct advantage in his or her marketplace. If you believe and your competition does not, that's one less obstacle between you and your goals, and it's a big one. Guys, don't underestimate that last part of page 54. That's huge. Who cares? If you're not doing things that other people are telling you aren't going to work and you're crazy for doing them, then you're probably not thinking big enough, and you're probably not on a path to build a big enough business to accomplish what your potential is. Yeah. When other people are telling you that what you're doing is crazy and it's not going to work and all of those other nonsense limiting belief things that people tend to give as free advice when they're not asked. All of those things, all of them, every single one of them should be gas in your tank, should tell you you're going in the right direction. Yeah. Guys, I'm in the expansion world. I hear it all the time. And guess what? That fires me up. Yeah. Because just like when Gary brought teams to the market in a big way, I mean, he wasn't the first person that said teams. My point is he brought structure to it and a process to it for teams. When he brought this to the market, guess what people were telling him?
Yeah, can't be done.
Can't be done. Won't work in my market. My market's too small. My market's too big. My market's too this. My market's too that. It won't work in my market. And Gary just took it as gas in his tank and said, okay, cool, good.
Yep.
And instead of worrying about what other people thought, what did he do? He went and found the few people who thought big enough and thought like he did and poured everything into those people.
Right.
So if people aren't telling you that you're a little bit crazy, you're probably not pushing the envelope enough, my opinion.
Yeah. So an aha on that one that I've had repeatedly over the years, 3 C's, right? So it's the can't be done in my, that's such a, there's 3 C's are the worst 3 bad words ever. Can't be done in my market. I'm comfortable what I'm doing, which creates complacency, right? So if you're not pushing the envelope, if you're not getting that feedback of people going, man, I don't think that's a good idea. I think you're pushing too hard. You're becoming complacent. You're going to stay where you are. You're not getting through that ceiling of achievement. You're not going to hit those really big goals, right, that you may have set. And you're going to, in complacency, your belief is going to become, can't be done in my marketplace. Because there's a lot of other people that have become complacent and comfortable in where they are. I'm doing enough business. What a terrible word. Enough. Yeah. Really? Can you write a check for $1 million for flood relief or something? No. Then you're not doing enough business.
Yep.
That's really where it comes to.
Well, and Jake, you made me think of this. You guys have heard it before. It's not mine, of course, but think of it's the goldfish in the goldfish bowl. And that goldfish will only grow to the size of the bowl or the tank that you have it in. And so if it's in a small bowl or tank, it's going to be a small little fish its whole life. And it'll be happy, but it'll be a small little fish. And if you put it in a big tank, it's going to dwarf that small little fish in the small tank because its environment allows it to grow big. My point is this. What's interesting in coaching people, when I'm asking them about what their goals are, what their daily activities are, how many people they're calling, how many appointments they're setting, how many units closed goal they have for the end of the year, what's amazing is it's very similar to everyone around them. Mm-hmm. And so if everyone around them in their room, on their team, or in their market center, or whatever, if everyone around them has a low threshold or their goals are low or they accept mediocrity or complacency or average, you'll never exceed that. You'll never be better than the sum of the people you're with. This is the whole Jim Rohn thing we talked about last session. But guys, this is the very same thing. You have to, you're going to be stuck and limited by those around you, just like the 4-minute mile. You have to find those people around you that think big like you do and align yourselves with those people because nothing great comes from being average.
Yeah. Gary said something from stage this year that I have not heard him say before. And it was really, really impactful for me. And I actually wrote it down for this, between these 2 pages, so it's poignant. He talked to his kids, and his kids were saying, well, how, when they were young, well, how do I become a millionaire? How do I become a billionaire? And Gary's simple question to them is, what are your habits? Do you have the daily habits of a $30,000 producer? Do you have the daily habits of a $100,000 producer? $500,000, $1 million? What are your daily habits? What's your routine? Who are you surrounding yourself with? And how are you pouring into yourself? Is that the habits of a $30,000 person or a billionaire? Because they are 2 different people. I can promise you their habits are very, very different.
And so are their results.
Yeah, actions are the results. He said it this year, and there was this like ominous hush over the crowd, which was really kind of cool.
That's awesome. It's true. So true. Who we surround ourselves with matters, especially in terms of these myth understandings. So let's look at page 55, the third one. The third myth or myth understanding is it would take too much time and effort or I'd lose my freedom. Now, I've heard this a lot. I've heard this excuse a lot, especially or specifically around why I wouldn't, as an excuse is what it is, why I wouldn't want to grow my business, why I wouldn't want to do more volume, why I wouldn't want to sell more homes and do more units, why I wouldn't want to grow myself or my business. This is the main excuse I hear.
Oh, yeah.
I'd lose my freedom, or It would take too much time or too much effort. Now, what's the truth in that one, Jake?
I mean, the truth is time and effort are not the deciding factors in success.
Now look at page 55 towards the top. Based on what Jake just said, that truth. Gary says they truly believe that the more successful you become, meaning the people that believe this myth, they truly believe that by being the more successful or the more successful you become, the more time and effort you'll have to invest and the more freedom you'll lose. What's interesting about that, and Gary's point as we're going to dig into this, what's interesting about that is it's actually opposite.
It's totally opposite.
Just like the computer, remember like we said at the beginning of this session, just like the computer, it's going to believe whatever we tell it. Our mind is just like that computer. And so if we tell it, if we're going to grow our business, have more success, do more units, whatever, if we want more, it's going to mean a tax or less on us, take away our time and our freedom. If that's what we tell ourselves, that's what we're going to believe because perception's reality. Garbage in, garbage out. Okay? Look at page 55, halfway down. He says, try looking at it this way. Any given approach to working with will correspondingly create a limit to the amount of sales production that can be accomplished by a single individual agent in a given work week. This is true. So for all you skeptics out there, he's saying the more you want to do, yes, it requires more time. You're valid in that thought. Okay? Stay with me. Some people then believe that this means they have hit a limit of their success, meaning, okay, this is as much time as I'm going to give it. That means that I can never do more than this much production. Then they try to get around this problem by simply working more hours. We're going to talk about this. They try to fix that by working more hours, and that is what cost them their freedom. The key to success at this point is not to apply more time or effort to the equation, but to think of time and effort differently. Try to see time and effort first as an efficiency and an effectiveness issue. Do the best with what time you have and you can devote to your business, and when that takes you as far as it can, you then have a leverage issue, which we'll talk about. Now, how many of you have read, or Jake, have you read, because I think some people might be muted, Cash Flow Quadrant or Rich Dad Poor Dad by Kiyosaki?
Kiyosaki.
Okay, so Kiyosaki is famous for how he's talking about the different quadrants. And if you've not read these books, if you need to expand your mind on the financial side, phenomenal resources. I'm not a part of it. I get nothing for it. Just really should read that book. They're both really, really good. But he makes a point, I'm paraphrasing, but his point he makes in both of those so clearly so many times is that poor people trade time for money. Mm-hmm. Poor people trade time for money. Poor people see the world as, if I work more hours, I'll make more money.
Yep.
That's how, and I'm not judging anybody in this, don't hear me clearly, but people who are impoverished, poor people have a view of money and the world that if I work more hours, I'll make more money. And the flaw in that thinking is they're associating time with money. Guess what? Gary's saying the exact same thing here. We can't directly correlate time in and money out because it doesn't work that way. As he says further on here, there's plenty of people that work twice as many hours as Jake and I and make a third or a quarter of what Jake and I make. And that's not bragging about Jake and I because we want to constantly push ourselves and make more too. My point is this. There are people that are slaves to their business. They tirelessly work. They're working multiple jobs. They're working countless hours and they're not making ends meet. It's not a judgment on those people, but guys, what I'm challenging you and what Gary's challenging you to do here is check your mindset on how you see money and time because the two do not translate. Guess what? There's only so many hours in the day, and if your world depends on how many hours you work, that's going to be a hard life, no matter what industry, specifically in ours.
Yeah.
We have to really check what's our mindset in regards to time and money. So if this is hitting you between the eyes as we're talking about this, read Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, read Rich Dad Poor Dad, read Cash Flow Quadrant. And that means you just need to do some extra reading over here. And the good news is there's great resources for it. Those are them. But Gary's point here is you want to build a big business. It doesn't mean you're the one doing all the work. What he's saying is treat time as an effectiveness and an efficiency exercise, meaning always constantly looking at how am I investing my time? Is it giving me a good return? And once I do that consistently and then I hit that ceiling of achievement, that's my business is telling me that I need leverage. And leverage, as we've talked about and we'll talk about more, comes in three forms: people, systems, and tools. And we'll talk more about that, and we've talked some about that. There's lots of ways to work in leverage. It does not mean hiring somebody right out of the gates. It doesn't have to be that as a first step. There's ways to build in leverage into your business that are automated, that are technology or systems based. But his point is, if some people just roll over at that ceiling of achievement saying, I can't put in any more hours and so I can't build my business bigger, they're right. Yet successful people who want to have a big life and don't want to be a slave to their business, okay, I need to look at business and see where I need to work leverage into it. Does that make sense?
There's a great video on Connect about cash flow quadrant. There's a couple different demo videos on that. I think Mark King does one and Schumacher does one too. As a quick and kind of simple, well, it's not simple. There's nothing simple about it. It's really powerful. But they're really good quick videos. If you guys want to jump on Connect and find those for cash flow quadrant, they're really good. Get you kind of hooked on, go read the book.
I love it. Now look on 56, and we're just going to buzz through these pretty quick, but he gives just a few of myths related to this bigger parent myth, okay? So the first one he says is activity means productivity. The truth, you can be active without being productive. There's market centers and real estate offices across the country who are filled with busy people who are broke. Busy does not equal productive, okay? And there's a big difference there. We don't have time to go into that today, maybe in a subsequent session, but star that one because that's a big one. Next one, efficiency equals effectiveness. And his point is you can do something very efficiently and still be incredibly ineffective. That's why people say practice makes perfect. Wrong. Perfect practice makes perfect because you can practice the wrong thing and you're still going to not have the result you're looking for. That's essentially what he's saying here. Now, next one, more discipline means less freedom. The truth is discipline translates to effectiveness, which leads to accomplishment, and that creates more freedom, not less. Now, being completely transparent, when I first came to KW and was told I needed to use the 411, I felt it was confining and that I was going to lose my freedom. And so I balked hard and I pushed back. And it was 2 or 3 weeks before my OP finally got me to come around to this. Now, God bless her. She's no longer with us, unfortunately, but God bless her. She did not force me to do it because she knew how that would have gone. Yet she walked through it with me and showed me this very thing. More discipline in this area actually gives you more freedom. And in the example of the 411, people look at that and say it's confining. Yet at the same time, now that I use the 411 and have for years, if it comes to Thursday, maybe Friday morning, and I see that everything I needed to get done that week to be on pace for all of my bigger annual and monthly goals is done, and my kids want to go ride their bike, guess what? I can go do it. And I don't have to worry about what I'm not getting done because I know I'm already on pace. That discipline of having it mapped out, the discipline of doing the 411 every week actually gives me the freedom in the moment to go do something else and be 100% there and not worry about anything else. Discipline actually equals freedom. But for most of us, our first reaction to discipline or the thought of it or the word or the sound of the word is to go like this, right? It doesn't have to be confining. Next one, justice for all, equal time should mean equal reward. His point here again, there's a lot of people who put in a lot of time and don't get the reward. His truth, reward always comes down to who does the best job. And we'll talk more about that in later sessions. Next myth, we perform best under pressure. His truth, you perform best when you focus, and pressure is a poor means to continually gain focus. That's typically just an excuse for a lack of being prepared. And the last one there on that page is I have time. And I love this one. Love this one. His truth, you have no idea how much time you have, so make every minute count. Yeah. Amen. Twice on Sunday. That's a big one, guys. That is a big one. None of us are assured any amount of time. So what are we doing with the time that we have? Yeah. Right? That one really hits home with me.
It does. There's a great YouTube video. Obviously, I'm a video kid, right? We get that at this point. So there's a great YouTube video. It uses jelly beans as a reference to time. It's a really cool video. And if you watch it with kind of an open mind and the thought process, what they do is they have this huge amount of jelly beans laying on the floor and they start cutting out what you use different jelly beans and what you're left with. So it's really important how you're using your time. It's a great reference for those of you that are visual kids. That's a really cool video to watch. So.
Would you post that in the group after this, Jay?
Yeah, I'll grab it and post it.
That'd be awesome. All right, let's look at the fourth one, page 57. The myth here is it's too risky, I'll lose money. It's too risky, I'll lose money. What's the truth there, Jake?
Risk is in direct proportion to how well you hold your incremental costs accountable to producing incremental results. Best word in there, accountable.
Now, here's what I'll tell you. 14 years of coaching people to build their business. This red light, green light concept that we're going to talk about. I mean, look, I literally broke a highlighter on this page. And this is my new book. My old one's over there falling apart. This is my leadership one with the binding and everything. So I don't even have all my notes yet transferred to this one. But here's what I know. This page is worn out in my original book because this red light, green light concept is so huge. This is one of the first concepts in the book where you're starting to see why this book has been hailed to be the Bible of real estate, the Bible of real estate sales. That's why it gets this moniker, because this is the first time that a book came out and showed a real estate salesperson how to run a business. Because the red light, green light concept, while not called that in corporate America, it's something that's very well understood and practiced by most successful corporations. Unless you're in technology, then you don't have to make money, but that's a whole other story. Great, but most businesses that are for-profit that want a good stock valuation, they have to play red light, green light. Your business should be no different. And yet, we were never taught this in real estate school. We were just taught about agency law. All right, so this is what's helping to fill the gap. So let's look at page 57. About halfway through that first paragraph, millionaire real estate agents know how to operate when the end result is unclear. Now, that's a big one right there, and we could have a whole call on that one, because fear, that spells fear, for a lot of people, not knowing what the end result is creates fear. And again, we talked about fear as false evidence appearing real. It's based on myth, like we also have talked about. So for a lot of people, this paralyzes them before they take any action. This prevents them from doing anything. And what did we talk about just a few pages ago? The best way to find out what your potential is to simply start trying, right? So this is where you see this battle back and forth. This is the biggest decision point. If this is you, if not knowing the outcome paralyzes you, then you need to look really closely here and intentionally choose to move forward without having that information. Because here's what he says. They understand that if you hold your costs accountable for corresponding incremental results, if you stay engaged after you write the check and evaluate the direct results of writing that check before writing more, you can greatly minimize your risks. Now, a couple things that came to me out of this paragraph, and yes, I have a lot more highlighted here, but a couple things. Gary gave us years ago, and I'm sure he got it from somewhere else. Doesn't matter where it came from, but he shared it with me and the rest of the people that were in the room at the time. The idea of canceling a credit card every year that you use for your business. Because what if you cancel your credit card at the end of every year that you use for your business, what happens, Jake?
You don't have a choice except to evaluate everything you're doing, because you have to change all your accounts. So if you've got, oh good Lord, I don't even use a bunch of them now, but if you've got like offers and Brivity and pick your 9 or 10 things that everybody grabs, a Zillow profile. When you cancel that credit card at the end of the year, you are forced to contact that company.
Oh, you're muted, Jake.
There we go. Sorry, I had weird things happen. So you're forced to cancel that credit card. You have to evaluate every single one of those. Do I want them to build this new credit card? Did I get my return? And again, so people, did I get my return on investment that I should have out of this? It's a forced red light, green light. It's a great concept.
It's a huge one, guys. And I promise you, if you go through this exercise in your business, regardless of how much business you do, you will find things and you'll be like, holy cow, I don't even know why I'm still paying for that. I haven't logged into that in 11 months. Why in the world? But guys, we set it and forget it. We get on these auto bill programs, mind you, which is why the companies do it that way. We get on these auto bill programs for a little amount of money each month, and we forget what the heck we even signed up for. So one first step into red light, green light is to simply canceling your credit card that you use for business, because you don't have to chase the people. Those vendors are going to chase you saying, hey, Jake, we can't charge your card. It's not working. Hey, Jake, we can't charge you. And you're like, who are you? What company you're with? And what was I paying you for?
Yeah.
Really good exercise.
If that's your set of questions. There's your answer whether you need to carry on.
Absolutely. All right, keep going in that paragraph there. It's just like the childhood game of red light, green light. You guys all remember playing that when you were a kid, I'm trusting. Instead of playing the traffic light for fun and games, you must be a traffic light for your expenses. Now, the key there is you have to decide to be that traffic light. It has to come through you, okay? Here's how it works. Once you have a green light, you increase your expenses by an appropriate amount. underline appropriate, by an appropriate amount to accomplish a corresponding goal. So you have to look at this and say, okay, what would be an appropriate amount for me to invest to get the return that I'm looking for? Now that you've increased your expenses, you have to hold that incremental increase accountable to deliver an incremental increase in income. Gary's talked about it a lot, that he would shoot for a 3 or a 4 to 1. Meaning if I put in $1, I should see 3 to 4 in return. If not, it's not a good investment, and that's a red light. He wouldn't do it anymore. The point of red light, green light is I'm going to increase my expenses, and I'm going to watch to make sure that my return increases simultaneous. And if it doesn't, then I reassess that expense, and I either cut it out or move that expense into a different category, but I'm always inspecting what I'm expecting. I'm always holding my money accountable for a return, because if not, it gets out of hand very, very, very quickly.
Yes, you can.
Now let's look at page 59. For time's sake, we're going to go to the fifth myth understanding. Page 59, the myth is my clients, oh my goodness, Jake, if I had $1 for every time I heard this, I would not be working. My clients will only work with me. Only I can deliver quality service. You've heard it before a few times too, huh?
I may have heard it once or twice. Yes, it is very possible. So, yeah,
what's the truth there?
I'll give you the truth, and then I'll give you the quick representation. So your clients aren't loyal to you. Get that through your head. They're not loyal to you. They are loyal to the standards you represent, right? Loyal to the standards of the industry. So what right now in fast food, I mean, as much as I don't want to eat fast food, I still do it. I shouldn't do it. I know that. What is the #1 fast food restaurant rated in customer service? What is it, you think? You know which one that is?
No.
Actually, it's Chick-fil-A.
They have
the #1 customer service, period, right? And it's totally because of their scripts. They do the same thing the exact same way every time. So it's awesome. Yet, do you only ever eat at Chick-fil-A? Because that is the best customer service, and only they can provide you that customer service. No, you're going to hit McDonald's because it's on this side of the street and you don't want to turn left, right? Your customers are not different, right? If they're sitting in the driveway of a house, then they're looking at it, they're like, this is my dream home. And they haven't heard from Jake in 6 months because he's not using command to its full leverage potential. And they're going to call the name on the sign because I'm not talking to him. I may think I'm providing that customer service, but unless I am inspecting what I expect, then no, I'm not. They're going to hit McDonald's over Chick-fil-A. It's going to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, where I heard this, guys, a lot was when people were deciding, do I remain an individual? Do I build a team? Do I join a team? Whatever. Because whether you're going to build your own team and have other people around you that you're going to hand your database to go show properties to, or so on and so forth, or you're joining a team, and maybe on a traditional team, you're not doing listings, you're just a buyer's agent, or you're just a listing agent, you don't do buyers, whatever. We get into these conversations around those conversations, right? Like, do I do this? But my worry would be that my people only want to work with me. They don't care if they just work with you. And Gary's point here is standards. And let's dive into that. Here's what he says on the bottom of 59. To tell you the truth, this is probably the #1 reason great real estate agents don't succeed to their highest potential. Underline that, star that, circle that, highlight that, dog-ear this page. He doesn't say that statement about any other part of this book. He's saying this is probably the #1 reason great real estate agents don't succeed to their highest potential. Anything that comes after this means it's pretty important, in my opinion. Here's what he says. To become a millionaire real estate agent, you will have to have or hire additional help. Now, there's lots of different ways you can do that, and we'll talk more in later sessions about how to do that. But on page 60, he then goes on to say, eventually, to reach your highest sales potential, you'll have to learn to delegate responsibilities and authority to others. This can be to people you hire. This can be when you join a regular team or an expansion team and you're having to leverage and delegate certain tasks to other people. It doesn't matter how. But guys, here's what I can tell you. Coaching teams for years and now running a big team, the largest one in the country actually, people have a hard time understanding how to delegate, how to leverage. They don't know how. We get agents all the time, and I'm sure people watching this have big teams as well. They see it as well. I'm guessing that people come in, and as soon as they love the idea of leverage. They love the concept of having other people to delegate stuff to, and then as soon as it comes time to actually handing it over, they go, But my people just want to talk to me. No, your people don't care about that. The people just want it done right. They want answers. They want information. They want honesty and integrity. And if you don't believe me, look at the NAR profile of home buyers and sellers.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Amen to that.
Talking to you individually or just talking to the one agent doesn't even rank on the top things they want in a real estate agent. It doesn't even rank, right? So don't put too much value in the wrong things. Now, here's what he goes on to say. Whatever services you provide, as specialized as they may be, can be duplicated through the right people implementing systems to achieve standards that you approve. Because people are not loyal to you, they're loyal to your standards, is his point. Your unique services are a byproduct of your standards. Whether you realize it or not, you have set beliefs on how quickly you should respond to a buyer inquiry or how a listing interview should be conducted, or how a difficult contract negotiation should be handled. Like your DNA and your experience with your customers is provided through the standards that you set for yourself and through your business. You can train other people on those standards. To Jake's point, Chick-fil-A, the founder, I didn't know the guy's name, but those standards come from that founder. In any organization, it's going to come from the top down. Those standards come from him. And if it were true, if this myth were true that they're only loyal to that person, then he would be a sole practitioner. He'd only have one to a handful of restaurants that only he was the one cooking and he was the one serving and he was the one cleaning. Yep. Guys, that's nonsense. And we know that's nonsense, but we believe this myth in our own mind all the time.
Yep.
The truth is, he created systems and training to take his standards and impress them and implement them into teams all across the country.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
He's not in those locations, but every single one of those people is representing the standards that the company is founded on and known for. Same thing at Starbucks. You can give lots of examples of how this shows up across the country.
Yep.
Now, page 60, and then we'll go on to the sixth one and wrap it up. The right approach to delegating tasks is to determine clearly what experience your clients and you expect of your services to deliver them, and then articulate that to your staff. So first you have to sit down and think through. And oh, by the way, maybe you should survey your people. Maybe you should survey your clients, right? Yeah, but let's find out, what is the experience that we've been delivering? What's the experience that resonates well with them, that they are attracted to and keep coming back for more of? What is it? And then we simply build a training and a standardized system around those things. That's how we can deliver consistent results. Guys, like we talked about it, I think last time, the E-Myth Revisited. I'm taking our operations team through it right now. And it's all about standards. And his point is, McDonald's isn't the best burger, but it's all over the country. It's fast, it's efficient. You know exactly what you're going to get. Consistency through the roof. It's the same burger here as it is in Timbuktu. The point is, systems are what make your business run. Systems are what's going to allow you to scale. Systems are the key. Whether it be through people, technology, or tool, that leverage component, systems help you make that reality. Now let's look at the sixth one. Now this is a big one. Not that they all aren't, but this, I even have a sticky note with notes. All right, so this is a big one. Sixth common myth understanding, page 61. Having a goal and not fully realizing it is a negative thing. What's the truth on that one?
Having a goal and not trying to achieve it is a negative thing. You have a great big goal and you don't take action steps to achieve it, that's the negative thing.
Guys, so here's how this shows up to me. Like towards the end of the year, fourth quarter is when I start traveling and teaching goal achieving and business planning. And what's interesting is I've been doing this for a long time, and we hear a lot of common responses, right? And so we'll have them do the goal setting. If you've taken Bold, you've been through a similar exercise where what's your goal? And then the challenge is what?
Well, the challenge is, okay, then what are the action steps to achieve it?
Yeah, but when we're first taken through the process of what's the goal, we look at them and say, okay, double it. And you see the body language on the person go,
oh. Yep.
Now, why is that? It's because we're programmed to believe that that may not be possible. And so instead of setting that goal because we might not hit it, we're going to have a safe goal. We're going to set the goal down here. Now, what's that safe goal based on? It's based on one of two things. Either our past and what we've achieved in the past, or what others around us have achieved. And both of those are lousy reasons to set a goal at a certain level.
I totally agree with that. Yeah.
His whole point in this chapter, or this section of the chapter, in this myth understanding, his whole point is this. If we allow the fact we might not hit a goal, that we set a goal bigger than we think is possible, bigger than we've accomplished before. If we allow that thinking to prevent us from setting big goals, we'll never build a big business.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact of the matter is, it's the whole shoot for the moon, and even if you miss, you're going to end up in the stars. Same difference here, guys. You set a really big goal. Even if you come up a little short on it, bottom line, you're further ahead than you would have been with your safe goal.
Yeah, exactly right.
You're further ahead. The business has grown. And oh, by the way, when we move the needle that much in our business, when we accomplish those things, our systems have to be top graded and upgraded. We get more efficient and better inside of our organization. Nobody loses in that process. The clients get a better experience. Internally, we get better. We get more efficient, and typically we have more profit, all because we don't choose to set a realistic or a safe goal or a sandbagger goal, whatever you want to call it. We set a stretch goal, and we push everything in our organization and our world to hit that mark and to accomplish that task.
Yep.
Now, for time's sake, we won't read it, but you guys, what I love, and I wish I could find this poster, but what I love is the poster he talks about his parents had. It starts bottom of the page here, but it goes through like all the dates, all the failure, all the muck, all the crap this person went through. And then at the end, we realize it's Abraham Lincoln and he gets elected president. Guys, most people, if you're being honest with yourself watching this, most people would have quit after the first one or two of that list.
Yeah.
Most people would have used that as a reason, totally would have been completely within their rights and reason to do that too. I'm not judging them. Most people, though, would have looked at that and said, see, no, I'm not going to go any further. Yet it's the relentless. It's the people who won't stop, that accomplish greatness in life. He had every reason to stop, and he chose to keep pushing, and all of a sudden, boom. Without this individual, our country, unfortunately, would have been in a very different place. Thank God he didn't quit. Thank God he kept trying. Thank God he kept pushing. Because of him, our country is shaped a lot differently than it was. Guys, the point is, holds true in your business too. It's no different. It's no different. So how do we see temporary defeat? Failure isn't final. Right? So we're going to experience hiccups. We're going to stub our toe. We're going to trip. Guess what? That's life. And that's also business. It's not a matter of if you fail or stumble. It's how fast do you get back up and what do you learn from it? And how fast do you get back to it and keep going?
Because it's only feedback, right? It's not
100%.
Nothing negative about it. It's not bad. It's feedback. What did we learn from the feedback of that hiccup in order to propel us forward?
Absolutely. Look at page 63 as we're wrapping this up. Look at our timing. Dang it, Jake. We got this knocked out. I love it. All right, look at this. Good, page 63. He says this is one of the secrets to great success is to change your perspective on failure. You see, everyone experiences failures before they ultimately succeed. Everyone experiences failures before they ultimately succeed. Some let failure stop them. Some keep trying. A little further down. At the very least, in attempting to achieve a dream and failing, you've learned to eliminate that approach the next time you try. Edison's famous for saying this, right?
Yep.
How many times was it? Do you remember?
1,000. It was like 1,000 times.
So he didn't say I failed, whatever the number was. He didn't say I failed this many times. He said I just found out that many ways not to do it. It's exactly what Gary's saying here. His perspective on failure is different than most people's. And before we go any further in the content of this book, you need to make sure your perspective on failure is different as well. Because with big goals and with following what's in this book, you're going to experience failure. And oh, by the way, when we have big goals, big dreams, and we're building a big business, the window between those failures shrinks and it gets shorter. And so it feels like we're experiencing more and more of it. The truth is, you're just slingshotting through the process that other people would take a lifetime to do. You're doing it sometimes in a month or a year. Yep. And that's totally okay. You're also gaining a ton of ground.
Yep. We hear people say it. Gary's famous for saying it. Fail faster. Just fail faster so you can get the feedback and move forward.
Absolutely, guys. And I think that is a great note to drop the mic on, end this session. Next week, like usual, Friday, 8:30 Pacific time, 10:30 Central, 11:30 Eastern, we will be going through session 3 of our time. Now, Jake, I'm going to pull out my stuff here. Session 3 is going to be pages 67 through 97. Session 3, next Friday, 67 to 97. We're going to go over the 9 ways that MREA thinks. Guys, again, phenomenal section as they all are. All of them build on each other. We're grateful to have you a part of this group. Grateful to have you join us. If you're watching this on YouTube and you're not a part of the Facebook group, make sure to look down in the description below. Click the link to join us over there because there's great discussion happening there on these videos. We'll also post this video in the Facebook group. Guys, thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend, guys. Thanks, Ben.